Hi, I'm Peter Roper, and this is Community Buzz, Talking Trash. We have the perfect guest for our topic. David Aldridge is joining us. He's the Executive Director of Southeastern Connecticut Regional Resources Recovery Authority, a mouthful. SCARA, I guess, is one way to describe it.
That's the way we say it.
Thank you very much, David, for joining us and talk a little trash here.
My pleasure. One of my favorite pastimes.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's actually one of my favorite topics too, but we met at Earth Day event at Groton Library, and I'm glad you're willing to come on and talk about this. Tell us about SCARA and what you do and what's involved and where it came from, I guess, a little history.
Sure. So the authority really dates back, we were formed in 1984 by a joint resolution of the 12 towns that make up our region. And the purpose of forming the authority was the construction of a waste-to-energy facility that is still operating up in Preston, Connecticut. Mm-hmm. In the 1970s, the state had actually passed a law mandating the closure of all of the municipal landfills in the state. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the technology du jour, if you will, at that time was waste-to-energy. Mm-hmm. So the state went about constructing these, and they ended up building, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, and or 6 of them, excuse me. And we were formed actually to bond the facility. So mm-hmm. we were kind of the financial aspect of that. So as part of that, we were responsible for all things solid waste in the region, be it waste disposal or recycling. Mm-hmm.
And so you're not really a state agency, but you were sort of mandated by the state?
No, we're special. We're considered a quasi-public agency, so mm-hmm. I report to a board of directors made up of 12 municipal officials, one from each town, with alternates, and we have an executive committee with the officers that I directly report to. And we meet on a monthly basis, and whatever is going on, I bring it to them, and we vote and decide the direction of the authority.
And so, who pays for this?
Well, it's an interesting question, and it's one that a lot of people don't really understand. So, when the waste-to-energy facility was financed, part of the indenture was a power purchase agreement that would allow the project, if you will, to sell the electricity that the waste-to-energy facility creates mm-hmm. at a premium. Mm-hmm. And those premiums went up over the 25 years that the bond was in place. And in the out years of that, the last, probably since 2012 or so, we started bringing in considerably more than we were spending at the time. So we created investment accounts and invested all the money. So at this point, the way our finances work, we charge a fee per ton of trash delivered to the waste-to-energy facility that pays for all the services that we provide. So that would include trash disposal. It includes recycling, the curbside recycling. We manage the majority of the commodities that are brought into our municipal transfer stations. Mm-hmm. So if you bring oil in, we have contracts to see that's tested for PCBs and it's recycled properly. We handle Freon from appliances. Mm-hmm. We handle fluorescent light bulbs. We've worked with the state creating some programs to handle mattresses and electronics. So most things that come into the transfer station we pay for, as well as 9 hazardous household waste events a year. Yeah. And we charge one fee to the town for all of those services. And we've actually been subsidizing this. So what we charge the towns is actually less than the cost for trash alone. Mm. And all those other services have been subsidized and paid for. Mm. So we've been in a great position up until now. Mm-hmm.
we've got a map of the communities involved in this. Maybe we'll get that up. It's a huge issue. As we know, everything generates trash, it seems like these days, and it seems like it's getting worse. There's more trash every day that comes in.
It is.
I assume the first goal is to reduce the amount of trash that there is.
Well,
and I don't know how much you can do about that.
You'll hear me say this a couple of times today, but yes, I mean, there's a saying in the business, reduce, reuse, recycle,
Yep.
and in that order. And we process, for our 12 communities, about 130,000 tons of trash per year. And that's been fairly consistent. I mean, it dipped a little bit during the COVID years. Mm-hmm. It went up. That includes both residential and commercial. We process about 18,000 tons of recyclables from curbside. And that's a lot. You know, it's been pretty consistent. The problem we have, and we can get into, is that capacity in the state's constrained, and the economics are changing pretty rapidly. Mm-hmm. And that's really our current concern.
So what is the state's philosophy about solid waste?
Well, as I said, they made the decision to eliminate municipal landfills, which I believe was a great decision. I mean, a lot of methane,
pollutants going in the water,
into the water, into the air,
making mountains.
Yeah, a landfill is really the last option that there is. So they really, we moved properly in that direction, and then they went to waste to energy. Well, it's not perfect because you're incinerating things. Yeah. So you're taking things that were natural resources turned into a product, and then you're giving up on them. Is the way I like to look at it. Mm-hmm. But that's better than landfilling. So we kind of went one rung up the ladder. Yeah.
And you still end up with waste when you get done with that. You still got waste when you get done with that.
What ends up happening after the incineration, electricity is generated, so it's considered a form of recycling because there is energy that's retained. The bulk of the material is reduced in volume by 90%. And there's ash at the end of that, which will go through magnets to remove ferrous metals. It'll go through eddy currents to remove other chemicals. The real high-tech part of these waste-to-energy plants is really the emissions control on the back end. And it is worthy of note that all of the facilities in the state have actually run for the last 30 years better than the standards that they're held to. Mm-hmm. So we really have done a good job with that. But again, we're taking something that was a valuable commodity, we're giving up on it and disposing of it. And that's not what we want to do.
Yeah. So basically you're still trying to get stuff out of the stream and recycle it before it gets to the incinerator.
Absolutely, yeah. So when the state decided to go with waste to energy, and they committed to waste to energy, they formed an organization in Hartford called CRA. It was later turned into MIRA, which was the statewide authority, similar to SCARA, but on a statewide basis. Mm-hmm. And they were tasked with working with organizations like the one that we formed to build these plants. And they were going along pretty well. They got to the early 90s and they stopped. So they built out about 80% of the necessary capacity, but we never got to 100%. So we've always been sending about 20% of our trash out of state to landfills or other incinerators. And recently, about a year and a half ago, one of the waste to energy facilities, the one located in Hartford, closed. It was, unlike the other 5 facilities which were built as new with the most current technology, they actually retrofitted an old coal burning plant. Mm-hmm. So some of the machinery in there was 80 years old. Mm. And it basically just, no pun intended, ran out of steam. Mm. And they closed it, which in effect, and I think there's a graphic on this, reduced our state's capacity from 83%, I believe it was, down to only 60%. So we are now sending about 850,000 tons of waste out of the state, predominantly on trucks, to Pennsylvania and Ohio, and at great cost both financially and environmentally.
Yeah, yeah. Is rail an option for transferring the stuff, or is it not go?
It is, but it's the fundamental problem we have in the state is one of infrastructure. We have, like I said, we only built out 80% of the capacity that we needed. So we never made it all the way. With this closing, there's that much less. And rail, in particular, requires infrastructure. And it needs to be in certain volumes so that the freight actually moves. So while there are a few rail sidings in the state, predominantly to move like construction and demolition debris, there is, I think, probably some municipal solid waste. The preponderance of it really moves on trucks just because logistically it's easier, and that's we don't have the infrastructure to load trains to do it.
Yeah. So that facility closed, and now we've got more waste going out of state. So what's your solution now, to do some more waste reduction?
Well, yes. In 2016, the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection updated its solid waste plan. And knowing that the needed infrastructure was A, too expensive, and B, very difficult to site, particularly in this day of environmental justice. It's very difficult to find a place to build one of these facilities new. So the option was to pursue waste diversion more. So taking a look at what's in that pile of trash and looking for the gold that's in there, so to speak, and trying to divert different commodities to recycling. So step one is actually to reduce, just waste less. But the plan from there was to divert what you can from that and use those resources in a different way. The problem there is, once again, there's no existing infrastructure to do that. So we've had a lot of meetings, we've talked about a lot of great ideas, we've tried to bring some more awareness to it, but we still need to invest in things, and we need to look at the long term. When you look at solid waste, your planning horizons, unlike a lot of businesses which are worried about year end or maybe a 5-year plan, we look at 15, 20, and 25 years. This is municipal infrastructure that's required, and takes time to do it.
Yep. I had a question about the recycling program itself. We've gone to the one stream, everything's mixed together.
Yes.
And that to me seems counterintuitive because
well,
I still separate stuff at home, but then I just throw it in the same bin. So let me know, tell me how it's working and what the theory was behind that.
It has its issues, and as with solid waste, the costs are going up really exponentially for a variety of reasons. But originally, when the recycling movement was started back in the early 70s and 80s and into the 90s, we did separate paper, usually on paper and cardboard one week, cans and bottles another week. It was decided, in order to get more people to participate, to combine those into a single stream, and so they simplified it for the residents. They just throw it all in the bin and we'll take care of it. The further advancement was, now, rather than having garbage trucks with 2 people on it where one person gets off and handles the can and gets back in, you now have swing arm trucks with one operator, which also kind of consolidated things down. Great economically, but it also limits your options. And products change over time, and we could do a whole show on this, but what we recycle has become a little more complicated, and so there is a lot of technology going into the sortation process, but that technology is expensive, and those costs are rising. So my general advice to people is go with the basics. You know, make sure that your bottles, your food grade bottles, cans, cardboard, paper are getting in the bin, and that it's all clean, and that can be handled. And if we were actually capturing all of that, we'd probably be recycling twice the volume we are now,
Right.
because so much of it doesn't make it into that bin.
I know. Oh, I see it every day.
Yep.
I see garbage cans overflowing with plastic bottles and metal cans,
Right.
and
Right.
so you have an educational arm, I assume, to,
We
to
do.
try to
We get out.
keep
we
it
do.
in
We
people's
get out and do a
mind.
lot of talking, and we get into the schools quite a bit. We have a lot of programs. Anybody can request something on our website, and we'll attend to that. But the problem with a lot of those programs is the people that come to hear you are the people that are already doing it right.
Right.
So you have to reach out to the people that are just really busy. You know, they may
Yeah.
have soccer practice, they may have a busy job, they may have a parent they're caring for, whatever it is, but their focus isn't on this. So we're actually running a test program right now in 2 of our communities, East Lyme and Ledyard, where we've outfitted the back of the recycling truck with a camera that takes film of what's dumped into the box, and it's fed through a program that is tied to GPS, and it can identify the basic contaminants. What we're looking at right up front was bagged garbage. We don't want any bags in recycling because they gum up the equipment that
Right.
tries to sort things.
Yeah.
So the program will actually take a picture when it sees one, tie it to the address. The next day it generates a postcard with a picture on it and some educational material.
Yeah.
And so we've been doing that since January in those 2 towns, and we've actually been able to reduce recycling by a third, the contamination recycling by a third.
Good.
So it works really well, and we're hoping that it's something that we can expand on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough because people tend to be lazy or uninformed, and they don't, like you say, everybody's busy.
Right, but you know, the
But
good news
I,
with this program is when we send a postcard out, almost never have we gotten
Yeah.
a second postcard to that same address. So
Good,
people,
yeah.
it catches their attention.
Yeah. And I just can't imagine that people don't want to do this because it saves money, saves resources. It's, you know, reduces the trash you get rid of some other way.
Yep,
And I'm assuming it's a plus. And
it is.
it's
all of
something
that.
you got to keep hammering away. But I think people can get it, just when they will. So we've talked a little bit about most of your programs. The Household Hazardous Waste Day is coordinated by you, or is that done by you?
Yes, we have a company that comes in.
I think it's great, by the way.
Thank you.
I always,
Thank you. We provide.
I'm a contractor, and I always tell my customers when one is coming up, and I even volunteer to take their stuff if I need to,
That's
because
wonderful,
I have a pickup.
and it's great. Yeah, we run 9 a year. We generally fill 2 tractor
And
trailers.
anybody in the region can go to any of them, right?
Anybody can go to any of them. There's no charge for it. Our staff goes out, and we will ask a few questions, direct people to the right place. We have a company out of Virginia that comes in that will sort everything. If it's gas and you want your can, they can decant it and give it back to you. We take pretty much everything that comes in, and almost everything that's brought in is recycled in one way or another.
Good.
And it's been very effective.
So you have paint, you have poisons, you have various
Paint,
liquids.
poisons, household chemicals, pool chemicals, a lot of paint. Yeah, you name it. Unless it's radioactive or explosive, we'll take it for the most part.
And you usually have a shredding service there at the same time.
We usually have 2 shredding
documents.
trucks, and that's been very, very popular. We'll bring in probably between 10 and 12 tons of paper at every event. So, and all of that's
You might be able
recycled
to clear
as
this
well.
up. I understand that the shredded paper you can't recycle,
Well, you can't put it in your recycle bin,
right?
because what ends up happening when it's all the recycling goes into the truck that picks it up. When they get up to the recycle center, they literally dump it onto the ground and load it into conveyors with big front
So you can't
loaders.
sort it when it's that
Everything
small.
goes into the air
Yeah.
if it's shredded. So if by coming to a shredding event, we shred it up so that it's secure, but then that goes directly to a paper recycler
Okay,
and
good.
unloaded so it all gets recycled.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, we try.
And I think that's a great program, and more people need to know about that, because the stuff that you're taking is really hazardous and
Yes.
should not be disposed of any other way, basically. So,
Shouldn't be. The last thing we want is
and
the
actually
stuff
now
to
with
get in the
paints,
environment.
you can take them back to most supply stores where you buy paint,
Yes,
which
you
is
can
great.
do that, and actually most of our transfer stations are set up to take old paint. It's a program, the EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility Program, that the state put in place, 4 or 5 years ago. And we have one for paint, we have one for mattresses, we have one for mercury. They've just passed one for tires, they passed one for propane tanks. And the idea is that the people that make the products have some responsibility on the end of life at the other end of that. And they've all worked really, really well.
Right.
So those are those.
So talk to me a little bit about the next big
big
leap
thing.
here is organics or
Yes,
food
it
scraps,
is.
food
Yeah.
scraps,
So
and
when we look at diversion, the lowest hanging fruit is really food waste. As I said earlier, we process 133,000 tons of trash a year. About 20 to 25% of that's actually food waste. It's wet, it's heavy, it's putrescent. Perfect thing to get out of the waste stream. If that were to make it into a landfill, that's where your methane gas is coming from. So we own, as you can see on the screen, a very large wood grinding operation that we take around to each transfer station, and we grind up brush that's brought in, and we generate about 50,000 yards of mulch per year, a lot of which is taken by residents and used by the communities, but we actually ship a great amount of it off at great cost. So we were looking at the possibility of building a food waste composting facility similar to the one pictured here, where we would take the wood waste that we generated, mix it with food waste, apply air to it, force air into it, which creates a perfect environment for the microbes that already exist in the food to activate and multiply, and they eat their way through.
Speeds them up and gives them everything they need.
Everything they need. And what's neat about it is that process actually, when they do that, they heat up, and a compost pile, if it's done commercially with the air, will reach temperatures around 150, 160 degrees. So it kills off all the pathogens, kills off all the weed seeds. And at the back end, what you have is a soil amendment, very healthy soil amendment that you can use to replace fertilizer. We ran a pilot test on this at the Stonington Transfer Station. Came out very well. We tested the end product, and it was a very high-grade compost. So we have passed zoning approval to build a facility in Preston, next to the waste-to-energy plant. So it's an accessory use to the waste-to-energy plant on 23 acres.
It's fairly central to your region, isn't it?
It's almost exactly in the middle, and for us it's great because it's about 2 miles from our office, so we're right there. And we've submitted, we've had the design completed. We submitted our operating permit to DEEP yesterday, as a matter of fact, and we're working out our business plan now. So we're hopeful in a year and a half that we'll actually be able to start diverting food waste to this facility. And we would expect, when fully built out, that the facility will handle about 7,500 tons of food waste a year. And from a financial side, what's important is the tip fees for trash are going up. We actually hold a really good contract right now that lasts till the end of the decade. But when that contract runs out, we're going to be going to market rate, which, like most of the rest of the state, and our prices are going to double. We're expecting tip fees, which are now in the low 70s, in 2030 to be in the $135 range. Food waste composting, by all the numbers that we've been running, we can process somewhere in the $65 range, so literally half the
Yeah.
cost. So from a environmental perspective, it's the right thing to do. From a financial perspective, it's absolutely the right thing to do. And once we build it, we have the infrastructure and we can continue with it for 20, 30, 40 years.
And there's going to be a system for picking that up from people's homes? Is that how it's going to work?
We're looking at a variety of ways. I've got 2 haulers that I've been talking to already, and several others have expressed interest. Food waste hauling is a pretty specialized operation, as you could expect, but there are several. There's one here in the state.
Yeah, that was on your website, I think.
Yeah, this hauling, they're out of Hartford. There's another group out of Massachusetts been coming down this way. They're both very interested in setting up shop. And I think what we'll do is have a variety of methods. We'll probably have drop locations at transfer stations. There are actually equipment coming online where like bins that you could put in a more convenient location, and you could sign up as a food waste customer and go there with your phone and Bluetooth and put it next to the machine, and it'll open up for you to take your food waste. So theory being you could put this where it's convenient to people and you're likely going to attract more. Plus we'd be looking at curbside, and most certainly we'd be probably the majority of what we bring in will probably be from commercial entities. So
Yeah,
picking up from them.
grocery stores and restaurants.
Grocery stores, restaurants, institutions, school systems. I mean, if you think about probably the biggest food service in any one of our towns is our schools, and
Yeah.
they have at least one meal a day, so quite a bit there.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we don't have enough pig farmers to do this.
No, we don't.
Pig farmers used to do a lot of waste.
The EPA has a food waste hierarchy, and obviously number one is you reduce, so you generate less. When you purchase things, you do it more effectively, and you use what you buy. But the next step of this thing is diverting food waste for human consumption, and there's a number of organizations doing that. After that, it would be diverting to animal feed, and then, short of anything else, it would come to us. And I'm actually in talks with an organization in Massachusetts called the Center for Ecotechnology, which does a lot of outreach programs, and we're looking to put a big outreach program in our region to come out and try to make those connections of diverting for food waste and saving as much of the food as we can, and then the same thing for animal husbandry, and then teach people how to source separate to bring things to us. So
Great.
keep tuned. Hopefully we'll have that in about a year.
And one other thing you're thinking about that I don't think you're doing now is textile recycling?
We are doing that now. So we estimate about 1,500 tons per year is textiles that just go into the trash or incorrectly into a recycle bin where they can't go.
Yeah.
So we've partnered with a company called Apparel Impact, a group out of New Hampshire, and they've set up, I think, 40 bin locations in our towns now. They're doing very well. Again, it's a matter of making it really convenient so that if somebody thinks, I want to take this to one side and maybe they can't get to Goodwill, which is a great option. We're not trying to divert anything from existing. We're just trying to add more and more capacity so that we can divert as much as possible. And so if we could move 1,500 tons per year, that's at no cost to us or the taxpayer. So it's a good thing.
On that note, I'm going to thank you, David.
Sure.
David Aldridge, for helping us understand about trash and what SCARA is and what it's doing. And I urge everybody to get more information and educate yourselves and talk it up because it's important to everybody. Thank you to our viewers for tuning in. Hope you'll keep connected with Community Buzz and be well.
Great.